Next on Currents News, a blow to President Trump's ban on asylum seekers who enter the United States illegally. Federal judge has ruled against the White House.
At a time when most are visiting relatives for the holiday season, a group of volunteers are visiting elderly in need in honor of Thanksgiving. I'm Katie Anguser, and I'll have that story tonight on Currents News.
Right after Thanksgiving, in tribute to persecuted Christians, churches in the Brooklyn Diocese and elsewhere will be lit in red. Tonight, a special preview with national correspondent Christopher White. Plus, the last words of Jamal Khashoggi moments before he was killed. The news starts right now. Hi, I'm Michelle Powers. Liz Faublas is off. A court fight is shaping up tonight over asylum seekers illegally coming to the United States. With the migrant caravan massing at the Mexican border, a federal judge has struck down President Trump's ban. Blocked. That's how a federal judge ruled the Trump administration's proclamation that anyone who crosses the border will be ineligible for asylum. As migrants arrive on the southern border in droves, the order is being put forth by Judge John Tiger of the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of California. He accuses the president of attempting to rewrite immigration laws, saying, quote, "Whatever the scope of the president's authority, he may not rewrite the immigration laws to impose a condition that Congress has expressly forbidden." His ruling is being slammed by both the Justice Department and the Department of Homeland Security. In a joint statement, the offices called Tiger's order absurd. Our asylum system is broken and is being abused by tens of thousands of meritless claims every year. It is absurd that a set of advocacy groups can be found to have standing to sue to stop the entire federal government from acting so that illegal aliens can receive a government benefit to which they are not entitled. The temporary restraining order is effective nationwide until December 19th. At that time, the court will consider arguments for a permanent ban. New reports tonight about what Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi said in the final hours of the Washington Post columnist's life. Khashoggi was at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul when he was confronted by 4 men. The CIA is said to have concluded that they were acting on orders from the Saudi crown prince. Turkish media reported that Khashoggi can be heard yelling, "Release my arm, what do you think you're doing?" After some scuffling, the leader of the so-called Saudi hit squad and associate of the crown prince, Mar Abdulaziz Mutrab, calls Khashoggi a traitor, telling him, "You will be brought to account." Following the sounds of torture, the tape goes quiet for over an hour. The voice breaking the silence, Mustafa al-Modani, the man meant to act as Khashoggi's body double. He says it is spooky to wear the clothes to a man who we killed 20 minutes ago. The U.S. bishops are calling for action after a gun rampage at a Chicago Catholic hospital left 3 victims dead. An honor guard formed for fallen police officer Samuel Jimenez, who was killed responding to the shooting at Mercy Hospital. A doctor and a pharmacy resident were also murdered. The gunman died either from police gunfire or a self-inflicted shot. Cardinal DiNardo, speaking for all bishops, said, quote, "In our desire to promote a culture of life, we bishops ask that the public policies be supported to enact reasonable gun measures to curb this pervasive plague of gun violence." Mercy Hospital is where Father Augustus Tolton passed away in 1897. Believed to be the first African-American priest ever to minister in the United States, Father Tolton's canonization is being considered at the Vatican. Courage in Red Week, a very special time for the church during the week after Thanksgiving. It's a campaign that's in solidarity with persecuted and suffering Christians around the world. The international papal charity Aid to the Church in Need is organizing the initiative. As part of it, Solemn Vespers will be celebrated at Brooklyn's Co-Cathedral of St. Joseph on Sunday, November 25th at 4 p.m. and televised live here on Net TV. For more on this drive to stand up for faith and religious freedom, the national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White, joins us. Chris, what is the current status of Christian persecution in this world?
Michelle, I think it's fair to say that this is one of the most undercovered stories in the world, not just in sort of the Catholic or Christian press, but in the mainstream press. We just don't see a lot of attention. But the fact is that Christians are they are the number one persecuted religious group in the world. And there are some stats that say that based on the lowest number of statistics, that there is a persecuted Christian martyr every hour, every single day. So really staggering numbers of an untold story that we need to sort of lift up.
And I've read some things that say that Christian persecution is at its height right now. Have you seen that as well?
Absolutely. If you look, the State Department and Aid to the Church in Need and other organizations produce for these reports, and every year these reports continue to get worse. So we see an uptick rather than a decline in Christian persecution.
So let's get to this campaign that hopefully brings about some change. Why is the color red being used? What does that mean?
Well, Michelle, red is historically the symbol and the color of martyrs. So that's why we often see when feasts during Mass are celebrated for martyrs of the church, the priests robe in red. And so that's why this color red is chosen. Sort of, there's the old saying, the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church. So here we have red representative of that.
Now, the Pope himself is on board with this effort, right? Has he mentioned it?
Actually, he did just today. Up in Venice, they launched an effort to sort of flood the Grand Canal in red, and the Rialto Bridge in Venice is red. And the Pope sent a special message saying, I'm on board. Thank you for raising up these concerns, and I support these efforts.
So we see the canals in red. We'll see our churches in red. Is there an area of the world where Christian persecution is its deadliest?
The untold story is the fact that places like China, where the Vatican is trying to, has been brokering a deal, you see a real clampdown on Christians there. That's part of the reason why the Vatican has really shined a light on it. Obviously, the Middle East is what people think about, but certainly in Africa, just earlier this week in Central African Republic, a major church bombed, killing 25 Christians. So all over the world, it's just absolute a terror show.
Now, what's happening here on the local level, and how can people like you and I get involved?
Yeah, there are all these initiatives that Aid to the Church in Need is recommending. Very simple things, such as encouraging church to have bake sales, selling red velvet cake, to sort of changing your Facebook banner to wearing red to schools and workplaces to start conversations, and then of course local fundraising, because really they're trying to raise money to get it to those most in need.
All right, Chris, thank you very much.
Thanks, Michelle.
Big news tonight out of Panama. Organizers of World Youth Day are revealing what the Pope will do when he arrives for the celebration in January. The Holy Father will land in Panama City on the 23rd. A welcoming ceremony is set for the next morning at the Presidential Palace. Among the events on Francis's agenda are a meeting with Central American bishops, a lunch with seminarians, and a vigil with the youth. The Vice President of Panama called this event historic.
And it's a very important visit in our country. One of the most important leaders in the world. Something that will be in the history of Panama, a sign of joy and peace and celebration, and to be part of a message that the Pope will give to the youth, and not just to the youth, but everyone.
The Pope will celebrate Mass with young people on the 27th. Net TV is planning special live coverage of World Youth Day direct from Panama, beginning when the Holy Father touches down. Tonight, the pace is quickening. Just days away from Thanksgiving, one Brooklyn nun is starting the season of giving early, part of a program that helps those who might be forgotten for the holidays. Curtis News' Katie Anguser has that story.
Mother Maria Amador is on a Thanksgiving mission.
I think that the most beautiful gift is our time.
The Sister of the Preachers of Christ and Mary is making house calls this holiday, visiting elderly residents who are spending the season alone because they are too sick or their family is too far away.
I can't imagine how difficult it could be for a person who are alone without family, without friends, and being alone during those times.
But Mother Maria isn't doing this alone. Her partner in this mission is Caitlin Toner.
I hope to just kind of give them some company and a little bit of joy.
They are both part of a group of 28 people that are participating in a Thanksgiving outreach program called the Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly.
Wrap them up nicely.
The volunteers plan to visit 50 homebound seniors living in Brooklyn and Manhattan before Thanksgiving.
We just want to make sure that they're still cared for.
The Little Brothers was started after World War II by a devout Catholic named Armand Marquise.
He had on his heart to serve the elderly who were just destitute and lost relatives during the war.
Today, the program is in more than 15 countries. For Caitlin, the visits strike a personal chord.
I'm very close to my grandma who lives very far away, so kind of related to that. I know how happy it is to kind of see a younger person and see someone else.
Flowers and cards made by Catholic school children are just some of the small gestures that make these residents feel they are cared for and loved.
It's a wonderful gift from God. I think an educational and
a gift that Mother Maria and the rest of the volunteers give with all their heart. In Crown Heights, Katie Anguser, Currents News.
If you would like to donate to the Little Brothers cause or visit the homebound yourself, go to littlebrothersnyc.org. Still ahead in this newscast, I'll be joined by New York Times best-selling author Mitch Albom to hear more about his perception of heaven and how lost love is still love this holiday season. Speaking of the spirit of giving, a big gift was given to churches of the Diocese of Brooklyn today. Maimonides Medical Center in Borough Park kicked off its Celebration of Light program, giving parishes in the diocese $1,000 grants to help defray the cost of lights, trees, and Christmas decor. There's a lot more news headed your way. The search for the missing goes on in California as the wildfires still burn and rain is coming.
If I just pulled my elbow out, I could have touched the flames. The ambers were coming down.
A California teenager put what was in her heart onto paper after she was saved from the inferno. The statue of a homeless Jesus Christ now has a new home. And an important programming note to share with you. Currents News will be moving to new time slots. Starting Monday, December 3rd, the news will air a half hour earlier at 7 p.m. right here on NET. Reruns will air at 10 p.m. and then again the next morning at 7:30 a.m. Mark your calendars. We'll be right back. New worries tonight in wildfire-ravaged California. Rain. Forecasters predict a major storm is on the way. The heavy rain is expected to move in later this week, bringing the possibility of dangerous mudslides and disrupting the search for the many people still reported missing. But firefighters will be helped out in battling the flames by the falling water. 16-year-old Hallie Johnson evacuated her home in devastated Paradise, California at the very last minute, and she has just 2 simple words for the firefighters who helped her. Adrienne Moore has that report.
Dear firefighters, my name is Hallie Johnson. I'm 16 years old and a junior at Paradise High School.
Simple words from the heart of a campfire evacuee.
I went with 3 other kids in a Ford Focus on the way to Sacramento. That's how I got out. If I just pulled my elbow out, I could have touched the flames. The ambers were coming down.
16-year-old Hallie Johnson put pen to paper after escaping the flames as they closed in on Paradise High School. She was eating dinner at a Logan's Roadhouse restaurant when she walked over to a group of firefighters getting a much-needed meal.
And I walked up to him and he said hi, and I didn't know what to say. I just kind of had the papers in my hands and he took them. He said, "This is awesome," and I smiled and he said, "Thank you," and then I said, "No, thank you."
With her gratitude poured out in pencil, she explains how their courageous work saved her family, friends, and reminded her that good people still exist.
They save the people, they save some houses, and then they're feeling down because they didn't save the town.
With Haley's family now in a temporary apartment, she hopes her small gesture inspires more acts of kindness.
Try to make each other's day, because if you don't, then I don't see how we could be strong without each other.
Haley says her experience has inspired her to become a first responder. Around the holidays and as Catholics, when a loved one is missing at the table, we tend to think a lot more about heaven. If it exists, what it's like, if our family is there. New York Times bestseller Mitch Albom wondered the same thing when he wrote The 5 People in Heaven. Now, years later, Mitch is releasing a new book, The Next Person You Meet in Heaven, and he joins us now. Mitch, your latest best-selling book is also your first sequel. You've written about heaven again. Why is that?
Well, when I wrote The 5 People You Meet in Heaven 15 years ago, a lot of people wrote me about what happens next. It was a story about an old man who thinks his life doesn't matter, and he dies saving a little girl at an amusement park. And when he wakes up in heaven, he finds out that the first stage of heaven is meeting 5 people from his life who explained to him little moments in his life that he didn't understand that changed everything for them and everything for him. And he found out this insignificant life that he led was actually very significant. And the book became very popular, and a lot of people said, well, what's the next stage of heaven? What's the next stage of heaven? And I used to say, well, just use your imagination. But I suffered a number of losses in my personal life in the last few years that got me thinking more about it. And I decided to return to that landscape and write a sequel.
So you know firsthand the pain some people feel during the holidays, missing your loved ones. How has faith in something greater like heaven sustained you through your own tough times?
Oh, without it, I would be lost, because how else can you explain that kind of heartbreak? I lost my mother and my father and a little girl that we were raising as our daughter, Chica, all within a 3-year period. And you need to believe that there has to be something at work bigger than perhaps you can understand, and also to believe that there's someplace better and together in order to deal with the pain of their being gone.
And now you've said that you see writing about death, a sad topic, as a way of illuminating life's importance. What do you personally think heaven is like? Is what you write about the book what you think?
Well, I had an old uncle who the first book was based on, named Eddie, who had one of those near-death experiences, on an operating table. And he said that he floated up above his body and he looked down and he saw all of his dead relatives waiting for him at the edge of the bed. Now, he didn't actually die. He ended up coming back into his body and living for a while longer. But I always sort of had that in my head as well, that must be what happens, at least part of what happens, because he's my uncle and he's not going to. So I created the first book kind of based on that. And look, I'm not smart enough to know what happens in heaven, except that I do think that we get to be with God. But I do like the idea of meeting people in heaven who would explain what we didn't understand on earth, because I think one of the big frustrations of earthly life is that things don't make sense to us. Why did this happen? This bad thing happened. Why did this always keep happening? And I envision if you could have that explained to you, that certainly would be heavenly. So I hope there's an element of that when we finally go.
And now with Thanksgiving just 2 days away, it's a holiday that we celebrate what we're thankful for. But what does gratitude mean to you? Should we have gratitude for all that we have, but also all that we've lost?
If you don't lose something, it's hard for you to appreciate what you do have. And if you don't have the absence of loved ones, you may not appreciate the ones that you have here now. And so in order to understand our time and appreciate our time and the people we have in our lives, sometimes loss can be very instructive, and loss can actually be precious. And it does teach us to take in and hold very close to our hearts what we have right now. So yes, I think we need to be thankful for the losses, as well, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us. Have a great Thanksgiving, Mitch.
Same to you.
Still to come on Currents News, the sculpture of a homeless Christ is being given as a gift to the church, and an auto mechanic sounds off on ethics in his industry and why doing it right is so important. Do you have a story idea? Is something happening in your parish we should know about? We want to hear from you. Keep this email handy. newstips@desalesmedia.org. Email us. We'll be right back. A new gift for the church in Rio de Janeiro, a life-size sculpture depicting a homeless Jesus. Cardinal Arani Tempesta blessed the statue to celebrate the World Day of the Poor. Homeless Jesus was donated to the church by its creator, Canadian artist Timothy Schmalz. A renovated cathedral is reopening in Panama ahead of World Youth Day, and Pope Francis will be visiting. The Basilica Cathedral of Santa Maria la Antigua will reopen later this month after 3 years of careful restoration. The Panamanian Tourism Authority says the Panamanian government allocated $12 million for the reconstruction ahead of World Youth Day. Pope Francis will consecrate the cathedral when he visits in January. In a survey about jobs and ethics, auto mechanics didn't rate well when it comes to business practices. Less than half of the people questioned thought the industry had high moral standards. Current News' Timothy Harfman reports on a Bushwick mechanic who values honesty.
Felix Rosado owns this auto repair shop in Bushwick, Brooklyn. And for him, business is not about the big bucks.
Honesty is everything.
But not all mechanics follow that same motto. In a nationwide poll conducted by Gallup, 22 occupations were rated high, average, and low on whether the businesses were honest and ethical. Only 32% of Americans judged mechanics as high or very high. Just over half, 53%, said mechanics were truthful, and 14% ranked mechanic standards as low or very low. But Felix says he's putting the brakes on the stereotype.
A lot of people are in this for the money, for the quick dollar. We're in it for the long haul.
Customers like Philip Rodriguez appreciate the honesty because when it comes to getting scammed by other mechanics, he's tired of it.
You need someone you could trust, and that's the biggest problem in the world.
Felix remembers how one customer, visiting from out of town, was taken advantage of by a competitor.
They were trying to charge her $600, and I told her she didn't need all those repairs. All she needed was an oil change and an air filter.
And how much did it wind up costing them?
$60.
Father Frank Mann is a Brooklyn priest at the parish down the block from Felix's garage and says honesty and ethics is not only important in the workplace, but it's essential in life.
Everybody has to make a living, pay the bills, so that's not an issue. The issue is, how do I make the money? What am I doing? What's my motive?
Felix is a parishioner at the nearby St. Martin de Tours church and keeps his faith in mind while in the shop.
I feed my family doing this. I pay my bills. I don't want to hurt anybody.
It makes me feel a little better knowing that at least if he is doing anything wrong, he has to answer to a higher authority.
In Bushwick, Brooklyn, Tim Harfman, Current News.
Some lucky birds visited the White House today as President Trump continued the tradition of pardoning Thanksgiving turkeys. Every year since Abraham Lincoln, some turkeys are saved, spared from the carving board. In the Rose Garden, President Trump took the time to give thanks for many blessings.
Peas and carrots will both live out the rest of their days at Gobbler's Rest on the campus of Virginia Tech. We give thanks to God, who continues to shed his almighty grace upon this magnificent land.
The commander-in-chief also thanked God for the men and women who serve in the military before taking off for a long holiday weekend in Florida. And something else to be thankful for this holiday weekend, the American Farm Bureau says Thanksgiving dinner will be a little cheaper this time around. Their survey tracks the prices of a traditional Thanksgiving meal. This year, it indicates the average cost of a 10-person feast will be about $49. That's 22 cents less than last year. The survey found lower prices on things like turkey and sweet potatoes. That is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers. Just a reminder that Currents News is moving to a new time slot. Starting Monday, December 3rd, the news will air at 7 p.m. And as always, thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.